welcome to the Worldview Media channel once more. It's a special episode this time. I have here with me Samuel Tshisekedi. Did I say that right?
That's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. Samuel is the pastor of ARC Church in Bendigo.
Yeah.
And I understand ARC is an acronym.
Yes. Which stands for a reasonable Christianity.
Okay. So that sounds to me like you're a bit into apologetics, and could you explain a little bit?
Yeah, so we do, theology, apologetics, but also we are if you will, in terminologies that people can get, a charismatic church or a Pentecostal church. So, the reason why we are a reasonable Christianity is because we think and believe that there's a separation between the defense of the gospel and and doctrine, and then the experience of the Holy Spirit as it was in the early church with the gifts and stuff like that. These things are not separated. They must be sort of part of the full experience of the Christian walk. But over time, people have preferred one and not the other, so we don't do that. We have all of them put together.
Well, that's actually quite a refreshing change, because for those of us who have been in and out of the Pentecostal movement over decades, we see this sometimes an overemphasis on experientialism to the neglect of good theology. It's always all either side will have a number of sort of weaknesses and things to deal with. If you emphasize experience and neglect sound doctrine and sound theology, what you have is, everything stands or falls based on experience. And in this day and age, in our culture, experience, when we say experience, we always mean really good, nice feeling type of experience. And so therefore questions like the problem of evil, when bad stuff happen, or when we get disappointed, start to stand in the way of actually people being able to carry on with the journey of being a believer. So you see, that's the negative side. And the people who are on the sound doctrine, theology, and apologetic side, they deprive themselves with the everyday walk and the experience of the things that actually is written in Scripture. So they have to find sort of scriptural. Not scripture, but these arguments that they have to put forward to explain why they don't want to go that way. And so the cessationism arguments start to come up, and there are now a move away. Cessationism. I was reading John Piper in recent time, and he was trying to say, look, we've got to recognize our Pentecostal brothers. Have got certain things right. Like the early church walk was not just simply, look, this is just a conscientious, well-written piece of some theology that you have to keep in your brain, but it also had that experiential attachment to it. So there is both ways must be. I've got a principle which says a man of wisdom avoid all extremes. Yeah, and that's in the book of Ecclesiastes. Yeah. We should devote a whole episode to discussing that, because I find that a really interesting subject.
It is.
We're here actually to talk about the Jordan Peterson phenomenon, which is a very interesting development. This clinical psychologist from Canada who's I don't think is a Christian in the traditional sense. Is probably making one of the most effective defenses for the Christian worldview at the moment. But before we get into Jordan Peterson, we might just for a second diverge and talk about your recent entree into the Australian media, where you got to be on Q&A, which is a nationally broadcast current affairs program on the ABC.
Trump's election was such that he won more states than his opponent, and he succeeded to get more electoral college by just a simple democratic system of the United States as it has existed till now, by convincing the voters that he was the best candidate. So why would that be considered a crisis of democracy instead of actually looking at it as democracy in practice because people voted for him? Or is it because there is a group of elite that disagree with the vote of the regular people, therefore democracy is in crisis?
And yeah, so congratulations on that. That's good on you for, you know, standing up. And
Yeah, I went there, so decided to defend the principle. I think that one thing that we always got to avoid is that what makes a game fair is if the principle is upheld, whether I win or I lose. If it's within the principles, and to have fair play, I have to accept the outcome because the principle was set before the outcome was known.
Yeah.
And so when I went there, I was decided to because to me it seems like the principle was not being upheld. You know, somebody didn't get what they wanted, therefore now they are attacking the principle itself.
Yeah.
So I went there to defend the principle, and I think, well, it was quite a good conversation.
Yeah, good, great. So, Jordan Peterson phenomenon.
Yes.
So this Canadian clinical psychologist, he writes a book, and he somehow gets interviewed on Channel 4 BBC in the UK because of some controversial statement he made.
And the interview with Cathy Newman.
You cited freedom of speech in that. Why should your right to freedom of speech trump a trans person's right not to be offended?
Because in order to be able to think, you have to risk being offensive. I mean, look at the conversation we're having right now. You know, like, you're certainly willing to risk offending me in the pursuit of truth. Why should you have the right to do that? It's been rather uncomfortable.
Well, I'm very glad I put you on the spot.
Well,
I'm very glad that I have exercised my freedom of speech.
You get my point. It's like you're doing what you should do, which is digging a bit to see what the hell's going on.
So
and that is what you should do. But you're exercising your freedom of speech to certainly risk offending me. And that's fine. I think more power to you as far as I'm concerned.
So you haven't sat there and... I'm just trying to work that out. I mean...
Ha, gotcha.
You have got me. You have got me. I'm trying to work that through in my head. Yeah. It took a while.
It did. Yeah.
I'll put a link to that interview in the comments section, because if you haven't seen Jordan Peterson and you don't know what all of this is about, that's a good place to start, because she is quite a capable journalist who tried to get him on the ropes, and it's elegant to watch the way he masterfully trounced and exposed the error in her line of questioning. And so he's kind of become a hero to many people who, you know, in these times of social division and polarization, he's sort of become a champion. But he's been, this is the thing I don't understand. By his critics, he's being typecast as this right-wing extremist, when in reality he sees himself as a liberal who's simply opposed to left-wing radicals. He's an academic, and he's a masterful orator, but he has embarrassed a lot of people because he's really exposing a lot of lies and the toxic nature of communism, and you know, he studied the atrocities of the 20th century and really quite insightfully identified how those atrocities began. And he's kind of, as far as I can see, he's kind of sounding a warning to us to say we're slipping down that slippery slope through capitulating to radical influences in society who want to change the whole foundations of society. So, what are your thoughts about him and what's happening?
I've looked at Jordan Peterson as a disruptor of a trend.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, this entire controversy started out with the laws that were passed in Canada mandating the use of personal pronouns for transgender people. And so his objection was that not only the government doesn't have any right to mandate speech. And so he objected to the fact that it started by, you being told what you shouldn't say.
Yeah.
Okay, to now being told what you should say.
That's right. And he said, in the entire history of English common law,
Yeah.
there has never been a law that said you must speak contrary to your beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he thought, no, I am not going to do that. And going against, at this point, it had become the most dominant thoughts across, universities in the academic world. So it was the infiltration of post-modernism, and so it's the post-modernists and the, as you call them, extreme feminists, that created the entire controversy. Most of his lectures and the stuff, he'd been saying this stuff for a long time, and until 2016 when this entire thing erupts. And so he's basically thrown into the limelight. And so then whatever else he'd ever said before, I had to defend.
Yeah.
But what is beautiful, as you're saying, the man is masterful in the way he uses the English language.
Yeah.
He's a good orator.
Yeah.
And he's an academic of a first degree. So, and he's read a lot. And so when he sits in an interview with someone, and because he's a psychologist, he's a clinical psychologist, his capacity to think and sift through people's thoughts are as good as any other philosopher.
Well, he's a listener.
Yeah.
To be a clinical psychologist, you have to listen to people and understand what they're thinking.
Yeah. And so I think, me looking at him, the reason why Jordan Peterson, draws so much attention and so many people toward him, is because he's been talking about things that culture in general, like academic, the academia, and even which is, it starts from within the academia and filtered through the people who come from the academia end up being the leaders in politics and stuff like that. So laws that get passed, and then it filtered back into the culture. And so there were the talks of rights and rights. You've got rights to this and right to that, and no one for some time.
Politics.
Yeah. And so for some time, no one was talking about responsibility anymore. I was actually listening to him. He says, all I'm saying of all things is just simply like, be responsible.
Yeah.
And people feel better about themselves, not just because you threw on them a bunch of rights.
Yeah.
But it's when they are responsible. Responsibility gives meaning to life. So the idea of meaning and responsibility is the other side of this very coin of rights, this, rights that. And therefore, because everything is talked in terms of your rights. And so you segregate people into classes. So it brings identity politics, which is absolutely against. Because then you create a class of people that are offended when their rights are not, the rights they're entitled to are not provided for. And so with these classes fighting for, when the rights clashes, there is no one is taking responsibility for how, this seemingly drifting toward a chaotic state of society can then be put back together in order. So this is why it's 12 rules for life, antidote to chaos. I like it, it's great.
Yeah, well, what we'll be doing in the next several episodes, I might be doing other things in the meantime, but what Samuel and I want to do is to do a series of the book, chapter by chapter, and sort of tease out what the significance of what he's contributing to the public debate. One of the interesting things for those of us who are believers is that Jordan Peterson is really articulating a Christian worldview in the sense that he's speaking in defense of traditional belief systems, traditional values, those aspects of our culture which were founded on the Judeo-Christian worldview. And he's being a very effective apologist for those values.
Yeah.
And yet, whether he himself is a Christian or not is unclear. And he himself hates the question. If someone says, do you believe in God? He'll say something like, what do you mean by believe? And what do you mean by God? Which, you know, they're good questions.
Yeah.
But I think he's not wanting to be pigeonholed as well. And, you know, if he is a believer, maybe he's a theistic evolutionist, because he obviously believes in evolution. That's part of what comes through all the time. But it's interesting that a man like him is sort of the champion of the Christian cause in an age of sort of polarizing debates, and his own position is unclear. But perhaps by being evasive about that question, he's actually freeing himself to engage the arguments on the terms of his own choosing.
Yeah.
For example, if we plunged headlong into a debate about why the Bible, the truths of the Bible, should have an influence in secular society, one of the first questions is that's going to come at us is, well, you know, what about the creation story, you know, and we're in this position where to defend the credibility of the Bible, we sort of have to scientifically prove the creation story, which Jordan Peterson is able to sidestep and just engage the argument where he wants to, and I find that's interesting.
I'm personally thinking, looking at the way you handle the question, thinking that just want to be very careful the way I say this one. Whether he's, I don't think that I could, you know, anyone could really determine unless one is, you know, sort of being with one person when they made a confession of faith to say, okay, well, I know this person made a confession of faith and therefore they're a believer. Or when somebody says, oh, look, I made a confession of faith, so you go by their testimony that they made a confession of faith, therefore they're a believer. And so that's probably the two ways to basically establish if somebody is a believer. By believer, I mean he's a Christian, you know, a believer in Christ, a follower of Christ. And so in the way Jordan Peterson answers the question when he's asked whether he believes in God, it's probably sincerely, as you know, as he says, he lives as though God exists. Yeah, that's his own words. Is I live as though God exists. Why? Because looking at the structure of Western civilization, he says which is true. These are the things that the Christian worldview posits, and there are metaphysical truths that you cannot avoid. If you can talk about an organized society like ours, only by either assuming or presupposing these things to be true. You know, I heard him take on the case that Dawkins and Sam Harris make the case. They sort of want to remove the metaphysical aspect that there is a moral standard that must be greater than the human, sort of more greater than humanity itself. And so they remove the foundational claim of that metaphysical reality, and then they think they can just by sheer simple logic hold the fact that certain things are right and certain things wrong. It's like, what is logical, what is illogical about self-interest, he says. Like the idea that I should be so self-interested that all that I care about is myself. What is illogical about that? And so his defense stands in that place where we know that the Christian worldview starts with the idea that there is objective right and wrong, which is not determined by just simply people's personal opinion or cultural standards. And so you've got to posit that truth, a metaphysical truth that right and wrong objectively exists. Yeah. And then having that standard, then the rest can make sense. And so in that sense, it defends very well that which it's taken the Christian world some time to be able to face up to the challenge of postmodernism. Yeah. And when I look at the Christian masses in general, apart from some of the Christian apologists and sort of philosophers who have taken the challenge, there's a number of them. One of them was one of my favorite, Norman Geisler, just passed away in recent time, or people like Bill Craig, or people like J.P. Moreland, or a bunch of them. Now, the masses, the Christian world, the masses bought easily into the postmodernistic idea that right and wrong, what is true and what is not, is just a matter of opinion.
Now, do what you want as long as it doesn't hurt anybody.
Exactly. At first it sounded like liberating. Okay, well, I don't even look. Yeah. If I say something you disagree with it, I'm going to look, it's my opinion. Okay, you can hold yours, I can hold mine.
Your truth is not my truth.
Yeah, exactly. So
ridiculous statement.
It is. Yeah. Because the idea that, okay, you have your truth and I have my truth, is that idea itself an objective truth. And so postmodernism went unchallenged for some times. And because of that, it infiltrated the Christian world.
And academia.
Yeah, so started in the academia, and the popular, the masses started to believe in this idea. And so people in politics started believing it. But the thing is, the postmodernists, they've got a trick. They're going to say, your truth, my truth, so everybody's their truth, until they are in power.
Yes.
And then they start to impose their truth on you.
My way or the highway.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Which is what we're living in. The reason why Jordan Peterson has gotten himself into that situation is because at first it was, look, okay, well, each person can decide which gender they want to be or what they feel like they are. Okay, well, that's fine. Just leave them alone. Let them be. And it's especially in the Australian context, live and let live has been sort of the core of a society. And then once they get powerful enough, they turn around and say, no, now you have to accept that the reality I have is now the meta reality, the ultimate reality. Exactly. It used to be, look, reality is a matter of your own interpretation of what it is.
Sure.
And so now when the Christians say, oh, hey, look, there are only two genders. It used to go, okay, well, you say there are two genders, okay, well, that's your point of view, I've got mine. Now it is no longer, you can hold your point of view that there are two genders. Now you have to accept our proposition that reality as we see it is gender is a spectrum. And so Jordan Peterson, okay, well, all right, you can hold that. And then you start to mandate that the government will have to say, you have to use these words, which fits this reality, that gender is a spectrum. Yeah. And so by the time he got to that,
and so he got labeled transphobic. and his reason for
whatever that means.
Yeah, well, his reason for resisting that wasn't because he had anything against trans people at all.
Yeah.
Was simply because he could see the connection between what's happening now in that kind of intolerance and what happened prior to the totalitarian atrocities of the 20th century, be it Nazism or Stalinism, and he said this is the slippery slope, and if we continue down this direction, there's no end of pain that's going to cause. The interesting thing about Peterson too is this, getting back to his perspective on the Bible. Peterson will defend the Bible as truth without asserting that it's literal truth.
Right.
That he talks about these notions of mythical archetypal stories that contain vital truths. And I think he gets to that from the social evolution point of view, where he says that we've developed these stories because they're really important. And if we throw them away, we do so at our peril. So, he will defend the Bible saying it's true without saying it's literally or historically true. Pastor Samuel, is it important that the Bible is literally true?
Well, it depends what we meant by literally true. In other words, you can say, is the Bible describing reality as reality is? Now, in describing reality as reality is, you can use, similes. You can use, metaphorical language. You can use parables. Jesus used those. The point is always, like, for example, give sort of a basic example. If I went to buy a computer and I came and sat down, I said, oh, I bought that computer, it cost me an arm and a leg. Now, somebody can say, is that literally true that it cost you an arm and a leg? Well, not literally true in that sense, but it is still literally true in the sense that the metaphor means that it was costly to me to buy this computer. So when they just don't understand the language, it becomes just simply a matter of, the use of, the linguistic side of things. I hold, and I think this is true, and it is defendable, that the Bible describes reality as it actually is. And that's what Jesus meant by, I am the way, I am the truth, and I'm the life. In other words, the proposition the Bible gives us, this is what Jordan Peterson is defending, but he comes at it from a certain angle. So he defends, I was listening to one of his lecture on the idea of the logos. It's quite incredible, because it posits that the idea of logos existed. It was a pre-Christian idea. The Greeks and the Greek philosophers.
For those who don't know biblical Greek, the word logos means word.
The word, yes.
The word.
Yes, yeah. So like the word, the principle.
And it's central to Christology, because the Word became, according to the Gospel of John, the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. That Jesus is the living Word. He's this pre-existent entity that was in creation. God spoke the world into existence, and then this Word becomes flesh and dwells among us. So,
what is incredible about John's Gospel is that the pre-existing concept of the Logos that the Greeks had known, and the philosophers before the Gospel writer had spoken about, he took the concept, the Logos, as the principle, and understood the Logos as incarnate. So the pre-existing concept, the principle that embodies everything, which is Jordan Peterson presents that beautifully, says, it is one of the most amazing concepts of the Western civilization, because the Logos is the principle that brings order from chaos. From chaos. If you remove the concept of the Logos, the embodiment of this principle, then chaos ensues. That's Jordan Peterson's defense. So John took in his Logos Christology is to present Christ as the incarnation of that Logos. And so, in that sense, when you look at the way your worldview is, actually, I like your worldview program, which is fantastic. We're going to be able to look at the world and answer a number of basic questions. So, the question of origin, that's what you're saying, are we all going to be stuck into defending, the creation story, which we can talk about that. And, the question of origin, the question of meaning. Does life mean anything? Jordan Peterson has written The Map of Meaning. It's quite an interesting read. And then his lectures are fantastic. So the question of origin, the question of meaning, the question of morality. What is right? What is wrong? Okay. And then you have the next question is the question of destiny. Where does it all end? Where do we all? I think they're about a question of identity.
Fundamental questions.
These 5 fundamental questions must be answered by every single worldview. Now, by worldview, I mean each person who presents an idea is trying to describe the world
according to their philosophy.
in some ways.
Yeah.
And so whatever explanation they're giving us must be at least coherent.
Yes.
You know, it must describe that which we interact with. You know, what is called the proper basic belief, the things that we know we believe to be true. And then, now, if somebody answers all these 5 questions, if the 5 questions are like the pieces of the puzzle, they must be interlocked together.
They've got to be consistent with one
Yeah.
another, yeah.
And I can say here that only the Christian worldview does that job better than any worldview whatsoever.
Yeah.
This is defendable.
That's the thing that appealed to me about Christianity in my late teens, because I went on this, I had this existential gnawing at my soul during my teenage years, and I went on this quest to know the truth, and I remember getting down on my knees beside my bed with the Bible in hand and saying, God, I want to know the truth, whatever it is. If the answer is in Buddhism, I will become a Buddhist. If the truth is in Islam, I'll become a Muslim. If the truth is in Christianity, I'll become a Christian. I'll be a Christian. And I started reading the Bible and was reading a lot of other things at the time. And I had this honesty session with God with the Bible in my hand. I said, God, there's a lot of good things in here, but there's something missing, something I don't understand. And I noted that all of the disciples went on to die for what they believed, and I realized that I had not yet found something that I would die for. So I said, there's something to this book that I've not yet seen. Please, 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 Lord, tell me, reveal it to me. And from that, I got a feeling that my life was going to change. And soon after that, I met this Chinese Malaysian who had been raised as a Buddhist but had become a Christian, and I found that fascinating.
Right. Yeah.
And he led me to rediscover the truth behind the faith that I was born into but didn't understand. I'll just say one more thing about Peterson and his take on the truth. I think he's not far from the kingdom of God.
Right.
But this idea of truth being conveyed in metaphor, there's a danger there that we can begin to say, well, everything in the Bible is metaphoric.
Okay.
And the liberal theologians of the 20th century used to say things like, Jesus really wasn't born of a virgin. He really didn't walk on water. He was just walking on a sandbar, and from where people were standing, they thought he was walking on water. And when Jesus fed the 5,000 from the food that a small boy brought along, it wasn't a miracle. It was just that this boy's act of generosity encouraged other people to share their lunch too. And ridiculous things like that. And so I would say it's very, very important to maintain the literal truth of the Bible. Although those metaphoric and parable stories do exist. I can't defend Genesis. I wasn't there at the time. So where were we?
So the idea that while Jordan Peterson defends the Christian worldview, but he looks at the biblical story as some archetypes. And so it's from a social evolutionist point of view. It's got a point in a certain way. What I find fascinating, the way he explains that, is the person who wants to do away with these, social structures that we have, assumes that all these ideas just simply happen to just be here and now.
And they're all subjective, and
but they've actually it's been a built-up from a social consciousness, stories that have been passed on, that has been a description of reality over time. And so, in that sense, if you're going to remove it, you must be able to sort of not just simply think, you can just remove it a whim. And that's why he says that you cannot remove certain concepts to the, the Western world system of thoughts without having to face major consequences.
Yeah.
And so I see him as the defender of the social structure.
And he's speaking as someone who studied the consequences of the detrimental consequences in other situations. Nazi Germany and Russia. And,
So I understand him defending the social structure of the Western world, because we recognize that the Western world has been of all the systems that were developed over time. The Western world has been if not one of the best. The best, if not one of the best, is to say that if somebody's going to be
I'd say unapologetically, it's probably the
best,
because of the egalitarian nature of Western society, that everyone has access to opportunity, and the vast difference between poverty and the inequality is reducing. Although there are some disturbing trends.
But it's to say that the stipulation of human worth and human dignity, the idea that there is some intrinsic worth to the human being, that is not afforded to them by the society or the majority of people or whoever decide, that human beings are born intrinsically worthy. And so that, so it's good sometimes you sort of get the nice visitor sitting there. Now,
for those who don't know what's happening behind the scenes here, my dog has just paid us a visit and jumped up on the chair.
Which is great. And so I see Jordan Peterson. It doesn't have to have a commitment, a spiritual commitment to Christ, to defend God's world. I take Jordan Peterson as an ally in defending that the reason I'm not a Christian because it's a state of mind or just simply my own personal state of bliss or some delusion that I find just helpful to me. I am a Christian because this is true, because Christianity describes the world as it is. And so Jordan Peterson doesn't have to commit to Christ to defend the value of the Judeo-Christian worldview that is actually built in the Western world. In that sense, I understand him. But if he commits to defending the social structure of the society as it is here, he is doing well. My concern for him is the reality he's describing is also metaphysical. It goes beyond here. And it would be in his best interest to look at that question seriously.
I would love to have a talk to him. I don't know whether my comments before got included or not, but I have got into trouble by giving testimony to supernatural events, miracles that I've seen, and when you tell people about things that you've witnessed, you see their eyes glazed over because they just cannot accept an alternative view of the world, and it includes that. I would love to sit down with Jordan Peterson and actually talk to him about some of those things, because they're apparently outside the realm of his experience.
And he's a very open-minded man. I watched one of his lectures, and he was saying that always when you present your ideas and you listen to someone else, listen to them, being open in case you're wrong. Like it would be the height of arrogance to just simply say I'm right and I'm not going to listen to someone else. It's okay to say I'm right. There's nothing wrong with that. But when somebody else is presenting a piece of evidence, a piece of argument, they're presenting their point of view, listen to them, not with all your walls up. I'm paraphrasing, and this is what we were saying, but listen to them, being open to the idea that they could be right. And in that sense, you would be able to benefit from what they presented to. So I think I take Jordan Peterson as, I'm a big fan of his. I take him as an ally in the defense of reality as it is, as we see it. And because myself, I'm not a fan of postmodernism by any stretch of the imagination, and I'm not, once it's filtered to politics and the class wars and the identity politics is really, I'm not a fan. And I've got a different point of view when it comes to the transgenderism, the idea of gender and whether it's gender or sex, and so on and so forth. So, I think there is a certain way of describing reality, and it's got to be tested. What is interesting is...
It's got to be objectively true.
What I find, as I was saying earlier on, which is why Jordan Peterson is really opposed to the postmodernistic idea, is because the postmodernists use your framework to give themselves wiggle room, and then they start to impose you their framework, regardless of what science says. They can use science at a time when it's convenient, but once they have gone past that moment and they're now in a position of power, even if you presented your argument with scientific data, they're not prepared to. This is the entire battle that Jordan Peterson's got in himself. For example, the gender pay gap. The radical feminist idea that history can be viewed only in a fight between male and female, and the idea that masculinity can be toxic now, and all these things. So he looks at the data. What's beautiful about him is because he's a scientist. So he would say, look, I've read every single literature on this question. So I'm a clinical psychologist, like in a Kathy Newman interview. She said, who are you to say? She asked. He said, I'm a clinical psychologist, okay? I'm a scientist. So I am saying this after having surveyed the data. But see, the postmodernism, once it's past that and it's got the opinion really set, even the piece of science is no longer enough to change the point of view. That's dangerous.
Yeah. So I think we'll have to wrap it up there because this could go on for hours. We have other opportunities. So have you enjoyed this?
It's been fantastic. And I'm looking forward to being able to do Jordan Peterson's, chapter by chapter, 12 Rules for Life. I think it's enriching. It's quite a good read. And being able to discuss that, and next time probably when he's in Australia, you never know.
We might get to see him. We might get to sit down with him.
Exactly.
Jordan Peterson, if you're watching this, we would love to sit and have a chat with you about all the things you're saying. And so to all the viewers, thank you for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification icon so that you can be notified of future episodes. And so thanks for watching.
Beautiful. Thanks for inviting me on the show. It's been fantastic.
Pleasure.
Yeah.